Welcome. You are at the CCC.
Where there are no outside issues. My name is Anthony. I'm a 7th-year doctoral student in clinical psych, an addict and an alcoholic, another bozo on the bus, and I care about you.
I love that. And I am LouiLou, and my pronouns are he and him. I'm a former Miss Castro Country Club. I am in recovery for crystal meth and alcohol, and I am always in search of balance. And each week we will provide and create a brave space where we can engage in conversations around topics of recovery.
Our intention is to hold and inspire better spaces for more people in recovery by tackling issues sometimes used to separate us.
But before we do that, please like, share, and comment, and ding that bell.
And now the disclaimer. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on At the CCC are ours alone. We do not represent anyone but ourselves. The material and information shared here is for general information purposes only. In other words, we are just a couple of friends behind a mic here to entertain you.
Absolutely. You know what's really cool?
What is?
Okay, so
very cool?
every time I listen to that back or whatever, it sounds just so professional. It's like, come on, oh my God. And then I think the next time I have to make sure I sound more professional.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about
the disclaimer?
Just a disclaimer. I'm not talking about any of the other stuff.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. How are you doing?
I'm good. All right, we got that out of the way.
Exactly. It's like there's nothing new. Just life. Life is showing up. You know.
Yeah. Nothing new to report. No. How are you feeling right at the second?
Less anxious than I was before I came over here.
You were anxious, which is great because that is today's topic.
I know. I threw you. I threw you a lifeline.
You did. You threw me a bone.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you were, because you and I have been talking about like your own experiences with anxiety. We both have history with anxiety. Have you been feeling like you had to gear up for today's episode to talk about it, or?
No, you know what? Honestly, I feel like a professional. So all I had to do is come and talk about what I'm going through on a regular.
Yeah. So I wanted to share some facts about anxiety to give us some context before we jump in. So for folks at home, so there's a bunch of different ways that we can define anxiety. Just for statistic purposes, anxiety happens to be one of the most common mental health disorders. I think it's something like 30% of people have dealt with anxiety at some point in their life. Anxiety comes in a bunch of different forms, right? You can have generalized anxiety disorder, which is basically a feeling of fear or unease that is kind of pervasive. It just happens and you feel it throughout the day. It doesn't matter what the situation is. You can have a panic disorder. And so what makes panic disorder different from generalized anxiety is that panic disorders generally kind of happen randomly. So they can happen randomly, and they can all both be very paralyzing. And then one of the more kind of common things that people are familiar with are phobias. So you can have like agoraphobia, so fear of open spaces, for example. So anxiety can be thought of in a bunch of different ways. And for today's context, we'll be talking about the relationship between mental health and recovery. And the reason why I started off by talking about Lewis's experiences with anxiety is because it's been something he's been very open about recently. So I guess I want to open up with the question, how would you say that recovery relates to the kind of your experiences with anxiety?
Well, the first thing I can say is I think that thanks to recovery, I'm actually willing to face it. Mm-hmm. I think that before I got sober, I probably would have used at it. I found I always joked about there was this window after a come down, specifically for crystal meth, possibly for alcohol. I see it for alcohol, but I didn't drink that way. But it's where you have that come down, you're super anxious or whatever. And I would say if I can get past that 2-week period, I could possibly stop. It wouldn't happen because I would be anxious. And then I would think, oh, no, I have to use. And so I didn't feel. I chose not to feel because it was too much. Mm-hmm. I didn't understand where it was coming from. And so I shut it down. I didn't address it. And unfortunately, all that's, it's not that I was dealing with it. I was just shoving it down. That whole beach ball thing where you push it down, and eventually I got sober and it came back up intensely.
Yeah, you said something really interesting when you said where it's from. So one of the things that I think is maybe confusing about anxiety is that anxiety is not like on its face a bad thing, right? The anxiety can actually be quite beneficial. Anxiety is not beneficial when it starts to take over, right? When it's on overdrive. And what we can talk a little bit about origins, but so, where it's from, right? So there can be organic causes for anxiety, right? So sometimes if a person has a thyroid issue, that can certainly cause anxiety, but then you can have situational anxiety.
It's like a spider sense. Huh? It's like a tingling.
Yeah. So
reminds you.
Right, exactly. And a lot of it's related to, our limbic system, which is it's in the middle of our brain. It's the oldest part of our brain. And its purpose is to protect us, right? Anxiety, when it's beneficial, it increases our heart rate because it's sending more oxygen through our body. And so it makes us much more capable to kind of take on the task that's in front of us, right? However, if, for example, a person experiences like a lot of trauma growing up, or they've been in situations where they've been kind of either put on the defensive or they've had to protect themselves, over time, that kind of gets ingrained in someone's brain, right? And so, they go out into the world and they're having these responses that they aren't quite sure like how to deal with them, right? And so I feel like the one other thing that I wanted to say about anxiety is that it's complex, right? Because anxiety by itself, like usually, for example, when you treat someone for anxiety and you remove the anxiety, it turns out there's all this other shit that's underneath the surface. And when you were talking about recovery, I feel like that's what happens, right? Like you take away the drugs and the alcohol, then you have all of these feelings coming up. And for a lot of people, that shows up as anxiety.
Absolutely. And I think the thing, or I can just speak for myself, shame plays a big part in dealing with it, or coming, or even acknowledging that you suffer with. Because like when I would go through, the second one you were talking about, the anxiety, the disorder, not wanting to talk to people about, like when I explain to people like how it shows up when I sit down on an airplane, the first thing that people want to think is that, oh, are you afraid of flying? It's not even that. It's like I have to go deep in. I love flying. I do love flying. My favorite part of flying is the takeoff and the landing, and I don't mind a little turbulence. There's something fun about that. But you know what I'm saying? It's like it's that feeling or how like. The last thing I need when I'm going through my anxiety or feeling anxious about something is for someone to feel bad for me and try to make it better. And I think that's why I'm like, I'm not talking to you about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, one of the things we talk about in recovery is like future tripping. So getting too concerned with the future, and anxiety tends to be about anticipation. Right. One of my favorite descriptions of it was years ago. My sponsor said to me, you know what anxiety feels like? And I'm like, no, what? And she said, it's like standing in the middle of Market Street with a machete waiting for a polar bear to attack you, and it's never going to show up. It's so unlikely. And that to me reminds me a lot of the way like we talk about fear, like false evidence appearing real, like just so many of the things, at least in my experience, like all the things I fear never come to fruition. And when they do end up showing up, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I have the resources. But when you're in it, I'll speak for myself. When I have a lot of what is referred to as like relational anxiety. So for me, like I get very anxious around very close relationships, like especially when it comes to like vulnerability. That's something that I've always struggled with. And part of it, like the anticipation there is like, you're going to hurt me.
Yeah.
Like if you know too much about me, you're going to hurt me. Or if I am, I think ultimately it's just like, if I open myself up to you, I'm making myself more likely to like be drained of energy or just any number of things.
Can I just give you a little credit credit for actually like, even though you have those feelings and you feel like you're anxious about them showing up, you still kind of step over that kind of, you have a faith, or you take action. Because I've talked to people about the fact that I'm not in relationship, and some of those same things come up, that idea of, I don't want to be in a situation where I'm going to get hurt. I have a lot of friends who like have shown me through their relationships, and don't get me wrong, I want the best. I love solid relationships when they go really well. But the ones that I pay attention to, I latch onto are when they don't go well. And I think that keeps me from taking, I'll save myself the grief. I'm not going to get involved. And that's me waiting in the middle of Market Street with a machete.
Yeah, waiting for the polar bear. Uh-huh. And if for me, when I think about anxiety or just kind of any unpleasant feeling, one of the things that I love about recovery is that it's giving me like a different frame. So one of my favorite steps is like the 10 step, especially the way it's talked about in the 12 and 12. And so for those who aren't familiar with the 10 step, we at the end of it, part of this is like at the end of the day, you're thinking about the way you handled yourself in the day. You're thinking about maybe some transgressions, and you're just you're getting to the bottom of that so that you don't repeat the same mistakes the following day. What I love about the way it's written about in the 12 and 12 is it's data. Mm-hmm. It's information that we don't use to beat ourselves with. It's information. So similarly, when I think about anxiety, that's information. And for some of us, like I know one of the things that I used to miss about drinking is, or maybe, you know what, if I'm being honest, like one of the things, I don't want to drink or use, but one of the things I miss about drinking is that like I remember when I had my first drink, that all the anxiety and all the noise disappeared. And that was part of what made drinking so comfortable for me. But I thought that was a solution. But what people don't tell you is that it doesn't work for very long. At some point, like the anxiety catches up, or you have to keep. I mean, it just does,
or it adds to.
It. Yeah, and of course, yeah, that was the other part that I wanted to get to. And then like the drinking adds to the anxiety because there's all of these other consequences that come from it. But where I wanted to land with that is like, an anxiety is information, and it's like, what do we do with that information? And I feel like that's where I, in the past, have gotten into trouble.
You said something. Okay, so the anticipation, it's information, but it's like without like I've been talking about it. I haven't been taking action, but I've been talking about the possibility of getting a therapist again because I have this information, but I don't know how to use it because the.
No, it wasn't us. It was him.
Okay. Yeah, if you're watching or listening, I just freaked out a little because every time we
thought Brandon was going to hit us.
I thought the iPad that we look on I know Brandon's going to give us a dirty look.
He's going to throw something across the street.
But like to the point, like I was saying, it's like, so I take the information and I was just thinking about it and thinking about how sad it makes me like that I think about those experiences on playing in the theater, wherever, and it causes me to limit like what I'm going to do, or maybe kind of question if I want to do it because I have fear. Because there's something about when that cabin door closes and I can no longer move freely about the cabin. It drives me. That's what, and I don't know what that's about, where it is, but it is something that just does not go away. Well, it goes away eventually, but thank God I am usually in a situation where I can't just get off the plane and say, I'll wait for the next plane. Mm-hmm. I have to kind of sit with it. And it's weird because I know in it that it's not going to kill me, but it doesn't feel like it. It feels like I am going to pass out and never recover from it.
So that's interesting. When I say like it's information and what we do, like it's information and we have to decide what we do with it. Mm-hmm. So in the past, it's like it's information. I felt uncomfortable and so I drank or I used around it, right? Mm-hmm. Or as a sober person, then this is what fucked me up is like in certain situations whenever I had that anxiety, I'd lash out. Yeah. Right? Like if you said something and it hurt me, I would lash out. Right? That's not my reality anymore, right? But the difference there is that you're doing it. Oh. Yeah. Well, you told me to tell you. So I think Louis might be anxious. He's like wringing his hands. But like one of the things that like, I had to learn how to do is like when that, this is kind of where I'm at too now in my life is like so relational anxiety, like be it a romantic situation or a platonic situation, when that anxiety comes up, what I've done before is like I would bolt and I would like remove myself from a situation and I would like ghost or I would lash, like I would fight or, just fight, flight, or freeze,
Yeah.
And so now what I've been learning how to do both in therapy and also in SLAA is that when that stuff comes up, like I get to have a different relationship with it now. And now my relationship is one of like kindness, and like I slow down and like sometimes take a nap, but what I try not to do, and I've, pat myself on the back for this, is I try not to throw the anxiety outside of myself, right? Because that just makes things worse.
What does that look like? You mean as far as lashing out?
Yeah, like if you lash out, for example, you know what I mean? It's like, it could be so let's just be real, right? So like, for example, in previous romantic relationships, like I had a lot of like, I've been cheated on. Okay, so some of my earlier like romantic relationships, I was cheated on. That was very painful. Okay. And so what ended up happening is like over time, I developed this like deep, profound fear I'm going to be cheated on. And that's just very painful. Right. And so in future relationships, what would happen is like, I was like always on high alert for someone to hurt my feelings. And so if anything kind of like mirrored or resembled, like anything looked like it, I would lose my fucking mind. Right. And so that's what it looked like to like throw it out. Right. And so what's happened when like I've done that kind of thing is like, I've just made things messy. Yeah. So now I have to deal with my own feelings, and now I have to deal with like the injury I may have caused this relationship. Right. That isn't to say that like, a person shouldn't like share what's on their mind, but there is a way of addressing kind of anxieties or fears that is healthy for everyone involved.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I was listening and I was thinking it's amazing how like anxiety can really kind of put me in my place. It can absolutely. And I was thinking about, what's interesting, you're saying that having those experiences and still kind of getting into relationships or whatever, I feel like that to me is the relationship that I have with anxiety, my recovery relationship. I'm not running from it. I haven't shut it down because I could easily not do those things that have brought me those feelings. I could just catch strain. I could make sure like that I don't put myself in those situations, but I don't want to be kind of controlled or limited, or I don't want to be paralyzed by these things. I need to kind of move out of it. Right.
And I think that's why for sure, like for me, outside help has been so beneficial, I've had a therapist since I was in elementary school, like I've worked with therapists since I was like really young, and that's saved my life, and in recovery, it's been something that's only improved my recovery. Similarly, I think that one of the things that I like about like 12-step is that for example, when we do like 1, 2, and 3, right? So if you're not familiar with 12-step, first one is you're basically admitting that your life is unmanageable. I was going to find another word, but it's, super messy. Your life is really unmessy.
Shitty.
It's really shitty. Your second step is you're coming to terms that maybe there's something bigger than you that can help you with that. And that could be any number of things. And then the third step is basically you're letting whatever thing that is bigger than you, you're kind of turning your life over to that thing. Right. And so I think when I think about like anxiety or like all of the feelings and thoughts that were very present for me in the beginning of recovery, like those first 3 steps really kind of stopped the bleeding emotionally.
Cauterized, huh?
Yeah, cauterized, but it didn't take them away, right? Like so one of the things that's really good for anxiety is like it depends on like the type of anxiety, but it's like structure can be really good about that. I'm careful around the language because if you have OCD, like too much structure can.
Oh, absolutely.
So the point that I'm trying to get at is like 1, 2, and 3. So the first 3 steps were very helpful for me and relieving some of that anxiety. And then the 4th step, when you take a fearless and moral inventory, so looking at like, the different things that upset you, the 4th step helped me identify like the behaviors that I was doing that was contributing to the situations that were like really fucking with me. And then therapy outside of that has helped me kind of do like the fine tooth comb and like kind of like identifying the like more hidden stuff.
Have you found, I mean, there was a time where obviously I was earlier in recovery. I found that I just before like I stopped working with the therapist that I was working with, I'd found the perfect way to make these two things work. Like for some reason, before recovery, I would go and I would talk to a therapist, and I would feel like it was a labor, and I wouldn't really know what to talk about, and I'd have to probably spend the whole hour talking and not really get to anything until too late. But once I started working the steps with the sponsor or whatever, then I had a clear kind of like roadmap to the types of things I want to talk about, and I feel like even now, because of the way in which I show up for myself in this and realizing, and this is, you know how they say more will be revealed? More will be revealed. It's like, girl, you got to go back to therapy because whatever you've been doing, it hasn't been working as effectively. And recovery has given me the courage. You know, it doesn't mean I'm not afraid. It just gives me the courage to address this, because a big fear or a big kind of concern is that this situation or this anxiety, the way it's showing up, is going to spread. It's going to spread and metastasize and end up in places. And I've seen folks who are anxious all the time, and I don't want to be that person.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I 100%. I mean, this I am really appreciating this episode and just like our conversation, because anxiety like has played has robbed me of a lot of things. You know, like it's robbed me historically of like, oh, this makes me really emotional, but it's like, it's robbed me of close relationships. You know, it's like, it's robbed me of, community, you know, like it's robbed me of, it's more than anything, it's like robbed me of like my peace of mind, you know? And so I think about like, sometimes I think about like, well, sometimes I get angry because I'm like, who the fuck put this here? You know? And I get like, and so I like look at my surroundings and I'm like mad at my family, or I'm mad at the people, or like, right. And the issue with that for me is that like, as long as I place the issues outside of myself, and like, there are things that are legitimate, right? Like, but as long as I place the blame outside of myself, I'm completely powerless, you know? And so I think about, you know, like you're talking about it being paralyzing, and so one of the things that's really helpful for me has been like getting into my body, right? It's like, okay, and we've talked about somatic therapy before, you know, like someone that I care about very much is a somatic therapist, also happens to be a friend of yours. We talk a lot about like part of like somatic therapy is like getting into your body and creating freedom in your body. And that's such a like, because we spend so much time talking and like trying to get through things, and like we don't get into our bodies. Right. And that's where that's where we feel it, you know, like it's like the gripping in the chest. It's like the heart racing. And so I was just thinking about like that's been something that I think about a lot, about like getting into this more physical space where like you can return to ownership of your body. And I think part of that is, at least, you know, from what I hear in the rooms and my own experience, is that when you're drinking and using, you're like, you've kind of lost ownership of your mind and your body. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm.
No, it's like, honestly, it's like I'm listening to you, and it's like I'm thinking of all the things that I'm doing. That is the one thing that I'm not doing.
Getting in your body.
Getting in my body. Like I feel like, you know, the light bulb went on when you talk about this idea of ownership of my body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, one of the things that I think about with myself is like, I didn't realize how I was using like porn and sex. Like sex to me for a very long time was like dissociative. You know, like I was having sex so that I can get the fuck out of my body and out of my mind, where I thought like, oh, I'm enjoying, like it's about pleasure. But no, it was about not being in my body, you know? Or I think about like pornography and like the way like porn allowed for me to like, I thought like, oh, this is about getting off, but it was like, no, it was about relieving anxiety and not being in my body. And so a lot of like the work that I've been doing around like my anxiety and like discomfort has been also about like owning my sexuality and like approaching sex differently, and like also just looking at the other ways in my life that I've tried to address my anxiety. Like food has been a big one. Like, even yesterday, like I was talking to our mutual friend, and it was like late at night, and I started talking about like my mom, and I started getting angry, and before I knew it, it was like 1 a.m. and I was ordering McDonald's, and that's real. And I hate saying that, but I was like ordering a double quarter pounder with cheese or French fries, 2 strawberry cream pies, because it was 1 a.m. and I was like anxious and I couldn't go to bed, and I was like, this is just what I'm doing tonight. Wow. But it's like food, porn, sex, spending, drama. Drama is another way of not being in your body.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so, So there's like returning to the body, and then also like spirituality. One of the things that is really grounding for me is when I can really feel and get into the, like, I can't control anything. Like God's ideas are much better than my ideas.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I have that happen way too often, and yet I still try to take the reins.
How do you incorporate spirituality when it comes to like your mental health, or just how do you incorporate like spirituality into those kind of things?
Well, I believe that I just believe that we're natural spiritual beings, and so everything that I do is spirit filled. Everything. It's like, I just believe that. And so I try to stay present. I talked about how like I communicate with my higher power. It's like we're talking right now. It's God and I have a kiki. And I usually try to talk about God as often as I can and talk with God. And one of the things that I got from a bishop of mine when I was going to church is like, when I'm having discomfort, I thank God for allowing me to experience it. I try to not just have this transactional relationship with the higher power, but a relationship where I'm in complete understanding that all of this is necessary for me to kind of, all of this is a part of my journey. It's not good or bad. It just is.
I feel that. I've thought about.
I have a comment.
There's a comment. Did Brandon put his fist up? Let's see that comment.
Hi, you.
Oh, hey, Bonnie Violet.
Hi, you guys.
Look at them exclamation marks.
Absolutely. And Hunter. Hope everyone's having an amazing day. I hope you're having an amazing day.
Thank you, Bonnie Violet. Thank you, Hunter. Don Lee says, anxiety lodges in my body. IBS attacks correspond to high level. Oh, absolutely. The anxiety can definitely fuck with people's GI issues, or like just GI tract in general.
That's with everything. Your sleep.
Yeah. Anxiety. There's also a thing. It's called somatization, which is basically when like you have a mental, when there's some like psychopathology or some mental health stuff going on, and it manifests in the body. So sometimes like anxiety can manifest as like GI issues, or it can show up as like eczema. It could show up as all types of things.
Yeah. I think that like we cannot leave without talking about the collective trauma that we've all experienced with COVID. I mean, like coming out of it, it's like, and what we're experiencing now in San Francisco with all of these places going out of business, businesses leaving or whatever, is thinking, and I may need to, like you, take a break from certain social media, just because I'm constantly bombarded with these stories and these ideas, and so helpless, so powerless. Like, what do I do? And do I care? And why don't I care?
Right. So there's a lot of stuff that comes up for me. So like one of the things that, and thinking about recovery and like what's been really helpful for me is, one of the things that I love about the third step, or like that I love about like my relationship to God, is that I am constantly reminded that I can't control anything. And that like the illusion that I can, like, for example, I could say like, well, I can pick up this phone. You know what I mean? But all it would take is for like just it's not an accurate, accurate representation of just how like complicated the world is, right? And so one of the things, like when I can really get into the like I can't control the world, when I can really get into that, like Because part of like the anxiety for me is like, I'm anticipating all this fear. So I'm going to ask you 1,000,001 questions and I'm going to orchestrate. But when you realize like actually all the questions in the world and all the orchestrating in the world is not going to fucking save you from anything.
Not at all.
You know, like, so when you can get into that, at least for me, when I can get into that, like all the orchestrating, then like there is a relief there because it's like, oh, there's nothing I can do. Right. Like, the other thing is that I've been doing that a lot recently and it's been paying off just exponentially. Another thing that makes me like really emotional is that like I've been working to like just fucking let God do what God does. You know what I mean? Not that I have control over God, but I've just like, okay, you know, fine. Like I'm going to hold this fear. I'm going to take this fear to the right place, you know? And one of the things I've been thinking about a lot is that restraint of pen and tongue has totally changed the nature of my relationships. Right. And it's been like not. And so as a result, it's like one of the things that's really grounding for me is like just looking for evidence of God's presence. You know what I mean? It's like I can use my anxiety to look for all the fear in the world, or I can use that anxiety or like refocus and like look for evidence of God's presence.
This takes me back to the 10-step. When I think about restraint of pen and tongue, I think about the 10-step. When I'm doing a regular 10-step, when I'm doing a regular spot check or reflection, I've seen myself in real time kind of change, like self-correct before like I create issues, because I jokingly tell myself, I don't want to have to write a 10-step on it. But we have a comment. Jaylon, oh my God.
I haven't heard from you in a while.
I know.
You want to take that?
I know for myself, based on how I grew up and bullying being a part of my story, as a result, I've developed a hypervigilance around my safety, which I have to work hard to manage because it has and does cause a lot of anxiety.
Jaylon, thank you for mentioning that. I feel like that's something. Were you going to say something, Luis?
Thank you for being present.
Thank you for being present. Thank you for that. You bring up a really good point. And I think that's one of the things that that is unique to like the LGBT plus experience, especially for those of us in recovery, is that there are things that are unique to being gay or queer, you know? And one of those things is like, there is like growing up, many of us did experience bullying, you know? Many of us grew up in places where it just wasn't safe to be gay. And even if you live in San Francisco where we have this bubble here, it's like we're still hearing things about shit that's happening in other states that impact like, you know, our trans family, and that impact like, you know, the poor like queer kids along, you know, the Bible Belt who don't have community. I think about the LGBT youth kids that like, you know, have ended their lives because they're in so much fear. And like, that is certainly anxiety that like still impacts us to this day. You know, one of the things is, I study same-sex intimate partner violence. And one of the things that comes up in a lot of the literature is that a lot of the turmoil that happens in our romantic relationships is related to trauma that's been impacted, right? And so when you have unresolved trauma and you put people in relationships, like it's a recipe for disaster, because you have two people who are terrified trying to figure things out, right? And so like similarly, you know, if you know, I appreciate what you brought up about hypervigilance. It's like a lot of people will go into community as like LGBT people and still have that hypervigilance. Mm-hmm. It's one of the reasons why, for example, I mean, this is just a theory, but like one of the theories is that the reason why like gay men are notorious for being catty or being mean is because they grew up, or we grew up having to have sharp tongues and having to defend ourselves, and then we come into community with each other and we don't know how to shut it off because we're still fighting.
I'm going to get you before you get me.
I'm going to get you before we get me. When in fact, and this is my opinion, when in fact what we really want is community.
Oh, absolutely. We all want connection.
Yeah, we want to be able to connect,
but this
etc.
Recovery has been good for me for that, because I slowly but surely, like, it is not my go-to caddy anymore. It used to be so much a part of my identity, but because of recovery, because of the 4-step, because of doing the work and realizing my part, I realized, you know what? I can lead from love. I don't have to go. And yeah, we should have a conversation about that.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things, like, it's, I have very mixed feelings about what I just mentioned. That's a conversation for another time. But in general, like in all of my relationships, the foundation of my relationships is like love and care. I don't have anyone in my life that I don't love and care about. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I also don't have anyone in my life that I feel is like not helping lift me up. Like all of my relationships are very healthy in this way. I think I feel like maybe like a place that we can move into is like, I think one of the things, like if you're not in therapy and if you're not in 12-step, or if you are in therapy and you are in 12-step, I think one of the first things that a person can do when they're dealing with anxiety or discomfort is to ask themselves, what do I need? You know, like in this moment, what do I need? And it's not necessarily
what
like,
happens if you don't know?
well, I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
And I think we can distill it to simple parts. The simplest parts is like, right now I'm anxious and what I need is to feel safe.
Yeah.
Like what I need is I don't want this, you know, like I think we can ask like, what do I need? Or like, what is it that I want? It could be, what would make me feel safe in this moment? Right. Like, and if you're outside of the anxiety, it could be like, what is the context in which I feel safest? Like, I think that can be a really good guide too, is like, when do I feel safest? When do I feel calmest? When do I feel the most grounded? Those are just good places, I think, to
what's interesting?
think about anxiety.
I think what's happening with me now that I think it was so easy before when I was outside of anxiety to ignore it because it wasn't happening, and now I'm starting to kind of think about it more in a way like how can I be more proactive so that I make sure that I don't, because actually what I need right now is for it not to happen, and that's not as realistic as I think so, because it's so weird how it shows up. It just shows up. It shows up when it wants to, and it annoys me.
Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah, I totally get that. And then, go ahead.
I mean, no, that was all. It's like just as raw as I want it. It just annoys me. It makes me mad. Like you said earlier, I want to find out who's at fault and do something with.
Yeah, I mean, oh God, I remember the first time I did my 4-step. I lockjawed on like a lot of my anger, because I was just kind of like, you all put this here. And one of the things that, I was just reminded of this recently because I'm working on a 4-step and SLA.
Just a reminder, SLA.
SLA is Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous.
I thought it was something that you put on a
coleslaw,
a nice pulled pork sandwich.
You put some slaw on your pulled pork sandwich. My slaw sponsor, we were talking about, so for example, one of the things that's come up a lot on my 4-step is like racism or like ideas of white supremacy when it comes to like gay sexuality. And that's been something that's been on my 4-step for a really long time. Complicated story, like that's kind of complicated, but it's been something that's on. And my sponsor was saying to me, Anthony, like, because I wanted to shrug it aside. And my sponsor said, no, that's legitimate. Your part here is holding on to that anger, right? And that just because I'm letting go of anger or I'm turning something over doesn't mean I'm condoning it. It doesn't mean I'm agreeing with it. But what it is doing is like, I'm choosing to have peace and I'm choosing to operate differently in the world. We are down to, I don't know what it was, 5, 6, 7 minutes. So we need to start landing the plane.
Yes, exactly.
Do you have any thoughts about anything we've said?
Well, I have lots of thoughts, but it's like I'm all...
Go ahead.
No, just saying lots of thoughts.
Yeah, I was thinking about how like, I think maybe something that's been helpful for me is to think about like the kind of life that I want to live. Like the what is it how do I want my relationships to look? And that has been a lot of the times, that has been what I've held on to when I'm like in the kind of grip of anxiety. Yeah. It's like, I think about, for example, I've made enough messes to know that like, sometimes like maybe there's like a conflict of some sort. And I have to ask myself, I'm like, okay, Anthony, like, do you really want to deal with like the the consequences of like popping off right now? Or like, one of the shittiest things I did recently is like, I made something my business that just frankly wasn't my business. And then I don't know what I thought was going to happen. And then like the person just kind of like they fired back. And then when they fired back, I was like, and what was I thinking? Like, did I think that like my being upset with someone was going to totally change their worldview?
I unfortunately I do that a lot, and I always say there's this little figure in my head. It's a little smaller version of me, and it's controlling me. But it's like sometimes it loses control, and I realize, well, wait a minute, why are you saying stop that? Stop! Don't say that. That is not. Yeah. Yeah.
Like sometimes like you're saying it and you like it's already happening.
It's like old behavior just popping back up. It's like that, like old me just come. And I think I did that recently too. It's like I made a comment about somebody's. I made a comment about somebody over like sharing beyond the 3 minutes, thinking that it was really my place to say something. But I was just like, you know what? And as condescending as I possibly could, if you can't share it within the 3 minutes that are allotted, you probably need to talk to your sponsor. And I'm like, wah, wah, wah. And I didn't realize this time, I realized until like I walked away, it's like, I'm all, you know what? You are not making this a safe space and you need to stop. You absolutely need to stop.
I know. I have to remind myself that a lot in meetings, one of the coolest things that one of the coolest experiences that I like to have is when people's opinion are different than mine about things that I think are kind of universal. We were talking about this the other day, like, for example, like if you have beef with someone or you don't like someone, we don't really have beef with people, but we think someone is particularly annoying. But then you hear other people, they're like, oh, I love that person, blah, blah. And I love when that happens because it happens all the time. And I love when that happens because it's like a reminder that my thoughts are not universal. Right. And that feels like a gift because I also have a bunch of other shitty thoughts that I'm glad are not universal,
The gift of recovery for me is that I no longer try to change people's opinion about that person. I simply just step away. It's like, come on, because there would be a time before where I would mean girl it.
Yeah.
And I would try to character assassinate and really kind of make other people feel the same way I was feeling. And the truth of it is like whatever's going on, it's going on, and it's usually about me. And most of the time I found it's about me. And when I get over my cheap self, as one of our fellow compatriots said, then I end up realizing, hey, this person has more qualities that I find endearing, or either I don't want anything to do with them at all, and I was right in the first place.
This is reminding me, I had a conversation with a really good friend of ours who is finalizing a divorce, and I don't want to. They're finalizing a divorce and they have children. And I was talking to this person yesterday who constantly amazes me. And he was saying to me, he was describing a conversation he had with his now ex-husband. And one of the things that our friend kept saying is like, there's no reason for me to taint what the kids think about him. The kids can form their own opinions about him. I don't have to share anything with them that taints their opinion. And I was so impressed because I was like, bro, like I'd be so fucking mad. You know what I mean? Like, and our friend is like so committed and so focused, and he's just been so graceful throughout that process. And I was just thinking, and I looked at this person, I'm like, wow, like how do you do it? But he has a power greater than himself, and he really works a solid program. So we have 2 minutes left, Brandon. I see your faces. There are kind of a couple things I want to leave with folks with if you're struggling with anxiety, and I think if you're in therapy, that's absolutely wonderful. Continue doing that. I think one of the things that has been really helpful for me is like just getting quiet. Sometimes all I have to do is get quiet. And then I have to think about when I'm quiet, what is it that I want when I'm having that like experience or gripping thing? What is it that I need, And then, outside of that, I have to also think about like, what is the kind of life that I want? Like what are the values that I want to hold? And like, what do I want? Do I want to be able to be more social? Do I want to be able to be in a loving, committed relationship? And then I ask myself, like, how can I work toward those things? Maybe that's, maybe I'm taking my issues, not my issues, but maybe I'm taking kind of like my concerns to a friend or a sponsor or a therapist or a doctor, right? But the point is, the takeaway here is that I'm not doing it by myself. I just don't know that anxiety is one of those things that we can, or should, maybe, that's just my opinion, that we should just try to like undertake
Yeah,
without any support.
And we need to take the shame out of it. So it's like, if you're able to talk about it with those that you trust, because I think that's been the key for me, to open my mouth and talk about it, because number one, there's always going to be somebody who can relate. And I am finally getting to a place where I'm open to hearing what they have to say.
Yeah. Like my sponsor says, it's better to talk it out than to think it in.
Yeah.
And so that concludes the visual part of the podcast. We have some information to give you, and then we're going to go, we'll turn the cameras off and go into our podcast exclusive conversation. So the Castro Country Club is a safe and sober community center for all people and a refuge for the LGBTQ recovery community. Recovery. We provide programs and services that help people change their lives. What I meant was we provide programs and services that help people change their lives by supporting personal growth. And our vision is to reduce the suffering of addiction by connecting people to community, opportunity, and support. You can find more information, including all of the ways to contact us, at www.castrocountryclub.org/podcast. Yes, and tune in every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time when we go live on our Castro Country Club Facebook and YouTube channels. Find us wherever you listen to podcasts. That was so funny. You were trying to cue... You talked right with that. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Michael. What? You were trying to cue Brandon. Well, I don't know. I was like... Well, I don't know if it's weird. Like, how when we were ending, we would stop talking. Yeah. But, like, is that still kind of necessary that we stop talking till you say end? Because that's just... No, he's addressed this before. Oh, okay. Yeah, he said that we can continue talking. Okay. We don't have to end at the 45-minute mark. You can continue talking. Yeah, but what I'm saying is, okay, got it. Okay. Yeah, but you were kind of, and then ta-ta-ta, and Brandon wasn't putting up the... Yeah, I was like, this motherfucker's probably on his goddamn phone right now. I kept looking over. Let me close the screen. Yeah, we don't need that. Yeah. Exactly. I can't believe I got emotional. No, I was feeling a little emotional too. Yeah. I feel like because it's true. I think, you know what it is? So I think the reason why, I get the feels around it is because, I'm not quite sure, to be honest. I think part of it is that I have experienced relief, and, it's so weird to say the word God, but it's like, and the only way, and I'm a clinician, right? So it's like, yes, therapy has been really helpful, and like spirituality and like literally having these experiences where like I feel God's presence, or like the world just kind of like moves and adjusts in a way that like confirms that like, my plans are shitty. And I think that's what it is. I feel like, I think, I think maybe it's just like, they're good emotions, and also I think the sadness there too, or maybe it's like a tenderness around like, I'm taking care of myself differently these days. Mm-hmm. I think the sadness, like I totally appreciate that. And that feeling of gratitude for my relationship with my higher power. But the sadness that I was feeling was, accepting that I have these limitations, and right now I don't know them. I don't know how to address them. I have little tricks that I do, little things that I do to kind of alleviate in the moment. But I know that just like with most temporary fixes, it's only temporary. And maybe this is why I'm at the place where I'm in the pre-contemplative stage of like saying, hey, I need to get someone to talk to and talk to on a regular basis. But I've gotten good information through this, because as much as I think I've been in relationship with my actual physical body, I don't think that I have been. Mm-hmm. Like I ran from the gym. I avoid meditation. Interesting. I turn off the lights and close my eyes when I shower. No, I don't do that. I don't even touch myself. I just let the water hit me.
Well, I was complaining before. Like, I see those naked guys in the Castro more than I see myself naked. It's like I'm all but, and that's actually kind of true though.
Yeah, and the thing is that that like going inward is probably some of the most powerful stuff that I've ever. I mean, it's even changed like the quality of my sex, right? Like is like being one of my favorite things that Mary, right? So Mary once said, she's like, the truth is riveting. And she says the truth is riveting. And the other thing is like, she's like, you can get so high being sober if you're just fucking present, And it's true, it's like, so coming into like my body, I should speak for myself, like coming into my body, like working out has been really helpful.
How
for
is
that. What do you mean?
How do you do that? Coming into your body.
So fucking stupid. I hate you so much. You're garbage.
Pretty much.
No.
Well, because the other thing I was going to say, what is it that you get a bigger dildo?
I make jokes because I'm sad. God.
Actually, no. There's some truth to it. I think that a big part of my personality, when I struggle with certain things, without knowing, sometimes I will go straight to humor. I will go straight to levity because I'm trying to shut it down because it's too much, and so
that's funny because I've been developing a very close relationship with someone, and so I've allowed myself to be like vulnerable in a way that I've never been vulnerable, and to have conversations I've never been able to have before. And when things get too tender, like immediately my body will go to like, make a joke, ruin this moment right now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and it's funny that I laugh.
Anthony has a whoopee cushion.
Yeah. I'm like, fart joke, childhood trauma. But it's like, what I've noticed is like the safer I feel, like the less my body needs that, I don't need to. The other thing that's been really helpful for me has been working out, and what it's forced me to do is that like it forces me to pay attention to my physical body, but also like the stuff that gets generated as a result of working out. It's like the thoughts that come up. I've had moments, I've had moments in the gym where I'm working, like I'm doing a rep of something, and what ends up happening is like, for me, what makes it difficult is like, sure, there's the physicality, but it's like all the fucking noise in my head. Like when I first started working out, it was like it's crazy. Like I'm being reminded of being bullied, or like horrible things that people have said, or like my self-doubt, like it all gets so loud. And there've been moments like, after a while, you keep working out and you keep working out. And part of that for me has been like, okay, when that thought comes up, what am I going to do with it? And so I've had these moments where I'm like, all right, I'm going to work through the thought. Like by that, I mean, I'm going to do the thing that my mind is telling me I can't do because of all this noise. And I've had these moments in the gym where I've had to like turn my head because I'm crying, because I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I just like processed something and I don't know. But I went about it in a different way. It didn't take a conversation. It took, literally like physically working through something.
You're like literally, when you're working out, you're literally releasing toxins.
Yeah.
Thought kind of toxins.
Yeah. Like psychological toxins. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm still not that impressed with exercise. I'm all.
But that's the thing, is that I also feel like exercise, like everything else, like humans have a tendency to fucking just like make things so horrible, from like God to religion to the Bible to like working out to like when humans get involved, sometimes they tend to like ruin things. And working out is like one of those things that is like, it's healthy, it's good for you, and it has all the weight of like, like all the marketing and all of the ideas and the comparisons, and it doesn't need to be that.
Yeah.
Like we literally need to be active in order to survive, and humans are designed to survive.
Yeah.
Right. But it's hard to do that because, like, for example, when I first started work, I would feel so insecure going into the gym. Like I wouldn't want to go into the weight room, like I would hide by the cardio equipment, or I would hide in a studio. Right. And it's like, why? Like, it doesn't need to fucking be that, So I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I totally get
This
that.
is we have this on our list next season. We get to talk about
What?
body.
Body.
There's a topic
yada,
about
yada.
body.
Well, we did body image.
No, but I think it was about
Being embodied. Right?
Yeah.
It's like something like that.
get me body like no.
That's a song.
After this, it's like I'll look at it. And
Okay.
Because I think
I think it was about being in body or like something like that. But yeah, I think about, like I have this, I've talked about this before. I have like this one precious life to live. I get this like one precious body to be in, we get one body, and it's, and we before you interrupt me, and I feel like part of that is like,
shut up,
how do
Louis.
because I have ADHD and you're going to take me far away from my thought and then I'm going to forget it. But it's like, see, now I forgot it. I honest to God just fucking forgot it. I knew that was going to happen.
This is how I make sure I can get my thoughts out because I'll forget too. Healing amends to our body, because I think that's that's a conversation that's beyond, like we talked about body image, but healing amends and everything that you're doing. But I'm sorry I made you forget.
No. It's not your fault. You didn't. Oh, one precious mind, one precious body. Oh, making it safe to be in. Mm-hmm. Right? It's like, how can I make my body a safe place to be in? And I like one of the things that I do is
you gotta make your body a safe place.
Like make it a safe place to be. Oh, I see what you're saying.
It took you a minute, huh?
Oh my God.
Come on, make it safe. Make it safe for me, boo boo.
But I know sometimes I'm like, I've talked about this before where I'm like, oh my God, I'm so uptight. I couldn't even hear the joke. You know what I mean? Like, I'm so serious.
That's okay, because I wasn't going to stop with it. I was like, I was going to take it deeper.
Yeah. But what I was thinking of, you use 4 fingers. Is that how you make it safe in your body, Brandon? Brandon just put up 4 fingers.
4 fingers pushed together.
To tell us that we have 4 minutes left. But what I'm talking about is like, there was a time where it didn't feel safe to go into my head because it was too loud. And there was a time it wasn't safe to go into my body because it was so unruly. And so I felt like I constantly had to like leave those places in order to feel okay. Right. And being like a sober person, I've been working on, or like a result of working the 12 steps is like, I'm making my body and my mind a safer place to go to. It's like, I'm no longer trying to drink at a problem or like fuck at a problem or sometimes eat at a problem. Apparently, since that happened at 1 a.m. yesterday, I'm not perfect. You know what I mean? By no means am I perfect.
This is your form of harm reduction.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not drinking or fucking at it. I'm just eating at it.
Yeah, I'm eating at it. But yeah, it's like, how do we? I think that's like just something I hope for people is like, you have one mind, you have one body, and it's like, those places, it should be safe to go there.
Yeah, absolutely. Because oh God, could you imagine? I guess again, that's what I've been talking about. Is like, if I didn't feel safe in my body and my mind, it's like, because you have nowhere else to go. You can't run from you.
You can't run. Well, you can run from you.
Well, you can run from you, but those things usually kind of like will do more damage than
Well, just like any running, eventually you will get tired, and when you're tired, you're still there.
Exactly.
Right. It's like that.
And then not only will you have to deal with the shit that you were running from, you deal with the shit that you accumulated as a result of running.
Yeah. But there is a solution.
There is a solution. Most of us do not like to self-seek.
Self-seeking availed nothing.
I know, exactly.
Yeah.
It's all good. Well, I think that we're done. It's like, I'm still less anxious. I'm further along in my process of thinking about what to do next.
Yeah. The one thing that I was just thinking about too is that anxiety can also, this is kind of like a curveball, but like anxiety can also be like, we can get like, even with like depression, we can get so identified or consumed with it as a way, like addicted to those feelings as a way of avoiding doing like the real work. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like the stuff that's lying underneath the surface. But I think that's it. I think we're done today. As usual, thank you for listening. If you're just listening online or on our podcast, thank you. If you saw us live, thank you.
Thank you for sticking with us.
Thank you for sticking with us. If you're new, thank you for listening, and we hope to have you come back.
Yeah.
And I think that's it.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Totally.